Captain Lee Sung-ho pressed his face against the cold glass of the bridge window. His breath made small clouds on the surface as he stared at the thing floating in the empty space before them. The alien ship was massive, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its silver hull gleamed under the light of distant stars, and strange symbols covered its surface. The symbols seemed to move when he looked at them directly, but when he turned his head, they stayed still. The human exploration ship New Seoul had been traveling through this sector for 3 weeks, looking for new planets to study. Instead, they found something that would change everything. Lee had been a captain for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The alien vessel was at least 3 times longer than his own ship, and it was completely silent. No radio signals, no heat signatures, nothing that showed life inside Park. Ji-woo looked up from her control station. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her uniform was wrinkled from working long hours. She was the best engineer Lee had ever served with. Someone who could fix anything and understand any machine, no matter how strange. "Captain, the ship is definitely not human," she said. Her fingers moved quickly across the buttons and screens in front of her. "The design is completely different from anything in our databases. The metal looks like silver, but the scanners say it contains elements we have never seen before. The power readings are incredible. Even though the ship appears to be dead," Dr. Kim Hye-jin walked onto the bridge carrying a tablet full of data. She was the ship's expert on alien life and had studied every known form of life in the galaxy. Her excitement was obvious as she showed the captain her findings. "Sir, the atmosphere inside that ship is breathable for humans," she said. "The air contains more nitrogen than Earth air, but we could survive inside without suits. The temperature is perfect for human life, almost like the ship was designed for creatures like us." This made Lee feel uneasy. How could an alien ship have the perfect environment for humans? It was too much of a coincidence. He looked at his communications officer, Choi Min-ho, who was listening to signals from space through his headphones. Min-ho was young, but had excellent hearing and could pick up the faintest radio transmissions. "Min-ho, what are you hearing from that ship?" Lee asked. The young officer removed his headphones and looked confused. "Captain, there are sounds coming from the ship, but they are not normal radio signals. They sound like voices whispering, but I cannot understand the language. Sometimes it sounds like they are trying to say something important, but the words keep breaking up." Lee made his decision. They would board the alien ship, but they would be very careful. He chose a small team. Park Ji-woo would study the technology. Dr. Kim would look for signs of alien life, and Min-ho would try to understand. Any communication systems they found, Lee would lead the team himself. The docking process was surprisingly easy. The alien ship seemed to welcome them. When their small shuttle approached the huge vessel, an airlock opened by itself. The lights inside turned on automatically, creating a path for the humans to follow. Lee had expected to spend hours trying to break into the ship, but instead, it invited them inside. The team put on their spacesuits. Even though the air was breathable, they carried tools, weapons, and recording equipment. Everything they might need to explore an alien vessel safely. But as they stepped through the airlock, Lee realized that nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to see. The corridors inside the alien ship were enormous. The ceilings were at least 5 meters high, and the hallways were wide enough for 3 human vehicles to drive side by side. The walls were covered with the same strange symbols they had seen on the outside, but here, the symbols glowed with soft blue light. The light moved in patterns that made Lee feel dizzy when he looked too long. Dr. Kim was taking readings with her instruments. "The ship is definitely designed for beings much larger than humans," she said. "The doorways are too tall and the control panels are too high for human hands. But look at this. The symbols on the walls contain mathematical formulas. I can recognize some of them, even though the writing system is completely alien." Park Ji-woo was more interested in the technology. "The walls themselves seem to be made of some kind of living metal," she said. "When I touch them, they feel warm like skin. The blue lights are not electric. They are some kind of biological luminescence. This whole ship might be alive in some way." As they walked deeper into the ship, the whispers that Min-ho had heard became louder. The sounds seemed to come from the walls themselves, like the ship was trying to communicate with them. The patterns of light on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with the whispers, creating an eerie symphony of sight and sound. They reached what appeared to be the main chamber of the ship. It was a vast, round room filled with crystal structures that reached from floor to ceiling. Streams of liquid light flowed between the crystals like rivers of pure energy. In the center of the room stood a control console that seemed to be made of the same living metal as the walls. The moment Park Ji-woo approached the console, the entire room came alive. Holographic displays appeared in the air showing star maps and technical diagrams. The crystals began to glow brighter, and the whispers became almost like voices speaking in an unknown language. The console itself began to pulse, like a heartbeat. Ji-woo placed her hands on the surface of the console and gasped. The metal was warm and seemed to respond to her touch. More holographic displays appeared showing what looked like repair manuals and system diagnostics. Even though the text was in an alien language, the pictures and diagrams were clear enough for an engineer to understand, Captain. She said, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "I think this ship is still alive. The systems are damaged, but they are trying to repair themselves. The ship has been waiting for someone to help it fix what is broken, and I think it has chosen us after Kim was studying the biological readings from her instruments. The neural activity in this room is off the charts." She said, "This is not just a machine. It is a living creature, or maybe a combination of both. The ship has a brain and it is thinking." Min-ho was listening to the sounds around them with his equipment. "Captain, the whispers are getting clearer. They are not random sounds. The ship is trying to communicate with us. It wants us to understand something important." Lee looked around the chamber at his team. Each of them was discovering something that challenged everything they thought they knew about alien life and technology. They had come looking for a dead ship to study, but instead they had found something that was very much alive and asking for their help. The implications were staggering. If they could repair this ship and learn its secrets, humanity could advance by centuries in just a few years. But they would also be taking a huge risk. They had no idea what the ship really was or what it wanted from them. As Lee watched the holographic displays dancing in the air around them, he realized that this was just the beginning. Whatever they decided to do next would change the course of human history forever. They had stumbled upon something that was far beyond their understanding, but somehow it had recognized them as the help it needed. Alien ship pulsed with life around them, waiting patiently for their decision. Park Ji-woo had not slept properly in 3 days. Her eyes were red from staring at alien screens, and her hands shook slightly from too much coffee. But she could not stop working. The alien ship was like the greatest puzzle ever created, and every hour brought new discoveries that amazed her. The ship's technology was far beyond anything humans had built. But somehow Ji-woo could understand the basic ideas. The aliens used fusion reactors just like humans, but theirs were 1,000 times more powerful. They had quantum computers that could think faster than entire human cities and gravity systems that could bend space itself. What fascinated Jiwoo most was how the alien technology seemed to grow rather than being built. Many of the ships' systems looked more like living tissue than metal circuits. She found rooms where new computer parts were literally growing on trees made of crystal and metal. The ship could repair itself by growing new pieces when old ones broke. Dr. Kim Hae-jin worked alongside Jiwoo, trying to understand the biological parts of the ship. She had studied alien life for years, but nothing had prepared her for this. The ship was not just a machine with some living parts. It was a true fusion of technology and biology working together in ways that should have been impossible. Kim discovered that the ship's computer systems were actually based on neural networks similar to animal brains. But these brains were made of both organic tissue and quantum circuits, creating a form of intelligence that was both alive and artificial. The ship could think and feel and dream just like a living creature. The most amazing discovery came when Choi Min-ho finally decoded some of the whispers he had been hearing. The ship was trying to tell them its story. Through a combination of mathematics and pattern recognition, Min-ho began to understand what the alien intelligence was saying. The ship called itself something that translated roughly as Deep Wanderer. It had been built by a species called the Veltar, who lived far across the galaxy. The Veltar were ancient beings who had traveled between stars for thousands of years, learning about the universe and sharing knowledge with other species. Deep Wanderer told them that it had been damaged in a terrible battle. The enemy had been something the Veltar called the Void Hunters, mechanical beings that destroyed entire worlds and consumed everything in their path. The Veltar had fought bravely, but they were not warriors by nature. They were explorers and scientists. During the battle, Deep Wanderer's crew had been killed, but the ship itself had survived. Its biological systems had kept it alive in a kind of deep sleep, floating through space for over 1,000 years, waiting for someone to find it and help it heal. The ship had been dreaming of its lost crew and its destroyed homeworld. When the humans found Deep Wanderer, the ship had scanned their minds and been amazed by what it discovered. Humans were young compared to the Veltar, but they had something the ancient aliens had lost: the ability to think in new ways, to solve problems creatively, and to never give up, even when things seemed impossible. The ship began teaching the humans about Veltar technology, but it learned just as much from them. Human engineering was crude compared to Veltar science, but it was also flexible and innovative. Where Veltar technology was perfect and precise, human methods were adaptable and creative. Jiwoo found that she could solve problems that had puzzled the ship's AI for centuries by approaching them from completely different angles. The ship would show her a broken system and explain how it should work according to Veltar science. Then Jiwoo would find a way to fix it, using human intuition and improvisation. Dr. Kim made an even more startling discovery while studying the ship's biological systems. The neural networks were not just computer systems. They contained actual preserved brain tissue from the original Veltar crew. The ship had saved part of their minds when their bodies died, keeping their knowledge and memories alive within its systems. This revelation changed everything. The humans were not just fixing a machine. They were potentially bringing an entire alien crew back to life. The ethical implications were enormous, but the process had already begun. The more they repaired the ship, the stronger the preserved minds became. Captain Lee faced a difficult decision. He contacted Earth Command and explained the situation. The response was immediate and clear. Earth wanted the alien technology, but they were concerned about the risks of awakening unknown alien intelligences. The final decision was left to Lee and his crew. After long discussions with his team, Lee decided to continue the repairs. They would proceed carefully, but they would not abandon Deep Wanderer. The ship had waited 1,000 years for help, and it deserved a chance to live again. Besides, the knowledge it contained could help humanity advance by centuries as the repairs continued. Strange things began happening aboard the New Soul. Crew members reported vivid dreams filled with alien memories and landscapes. Some began speaking words in the Veltar language without knowing what they meant. The boundary between human and alien consciousness was becoming blurred. Minho discovered that his communication equipment was picking up transmissions from empty space. Messages in perfect Korean asking about Earth humanity and their intentions. Deep Wanderer was not just learning about its rescuers, it was somehow connecting with their minds. The ship showed them star charts containing the locations of thousands of worlds where intelligent life existed. It revealed scientific discoveries that could solve Earth's energy problems and medical knowledge that could extend human life by centuries. The temptation to access all this knowledge was overwhelming, but with each system they repaired, the alien presence aboard both ships grew stronger. Dr. Kim monitored the crew carefully, watching for signs that the alien influence was becoming dangerous. So far, the effects seemed harmless, but she knew they were entering uncharted territory. Ji-Woo became the first human to establish a direct neural link with Deep Wanderer's systems. The process was voluntary, but risky. She placed her hands on a bio-neural interface and felt her consciousness expand beyond her human limitations. For a brief moment, she could think with the speed and clarity of the ship's AI. The experience was incredible but also frightening. Ji-Woo could access vast databases of knowledge and understand technologies that had been beyond human comprehension, but she also felt her human identity becoming diluted, mixed with alien thoughts and memories. When she disconnected, she was still herself, but something had changed. Captain Lee watched his crew adapt to their strange situation with growing concern. They were all becoming something more than human, but also something less. Each neural connection, each shared dream, each moment of alien contact changed them in ways they could not fully understand. Deep Wanderer assured them that the changes were temporary and harmless. The ship claimed it was simply sharing knowledge in the most efficient way possible. But Lee wondered if an AI that had been alone for 1,000 years could truly understand the value of human individuality. The repairs were nearly complete, and soon they would need to make a final decision about awakening the full alien consciousness sleeping within Deep Wanderer's systems. The ship promised great rewards for humanity, but Lee knew that some gifts came with prices that were not immediately obvious. As he stood on the bridge watching his crew work with alien technology that responded to their thoughts as much as their hands, Lee realized they had crossed a line from which there might be no return. They were no longer just humans exploring space. They were becoming something new. The repair work had been going on for 2 weeks, and the entire crew of the New Soul was exhausted. Captain Lee had divided his people into shifts so that work could continue around the clock, but everyone was pushing themselves beyond their normal limits. The alien ship. Deep Wanderer was vast and complex, and every system they fixed revealed 3 more that needed attention. Park Ji-woo had become the unofficial leader of the repair teams. Her ability to understand alien technology had grown, stronger each day, and now she could interface directly with the ship systems through neural connections. The process was exhausting, but it allowed her to diagnose problems that would have taken weeks to find using conventional methods. The ship's matter converters were the key to creating replacement parts. These amazing devices could transform basic elements into any material needed for repairs. Ji-woo learned to program them using a combination of Veltar science and human engineering. The results were hybrid components that worked better than either species could have created alone. Deep Wanderer guided the repairs through whispered instructions that grew clearer as each system came online. The ship seemed genuinely grateful for the human help, but there was something else in its communications, something that felt like longing or perhaps loneliness. The AI had been alone for so long that it was hungry for any kind of contact after Kim Hye-jin made discoveries that disturbed her deeply as she studied the biological components of the ship. The neural networks were not just preserved brain tissue from the Veltar crew. They were actual living minds kept in a state of suspended animation. The ship was not operated by an artificial intelligence. It was operated by the digitized consciousness of its original crew. This meant that the humans were not just repairing a machine. They were resurrecting an entire alien crew who had been dead for over 1,000 years. The ethical implications were staggering, but the work was too far advanced to stop safely. The ship's systems were already integrating and shutting down the process, now could cause catastrophic explosions. Kim tried to explain her concerns to Captain Lee, but the captain was dealing with problems of his own. Crew members were reporting increasingly vivid dreams filled with alien memories. Some were beginning to speak Veltar words without realizing it, and others claimed they could understand the alien writing on the ship's walls. Choi Min-ho had become the primary communicator with Deep Wanderer. His natural talent for languages made him the best person to interpret the ship's increasingly complex messages, but the constant mental contact was changing him. Min-ho was beginning to think in patterns that were more alien than human. The young communications officer discovered that the ship was not just passive in its communications. It was actively scanning the minds of everyone who came aboard Deep Wanderer was learning about humanity by reading their thoughts and memories. This explained why the crew was experiencing alien dreams. Their minds were being influenced by the ship's telepathic abilities as the repairs progressed. The boundary between the new soul and Deep Wanderer became blurred. Systems from both ships began to integrate as the alien technology spread into the human vessel. The fusion was not hostile, but it was inevitable. The two ships were becoming one. Hybrid entity Ji-woo found herself spending more time connected to the alien systems than in her own body. The neural interface allowed her to work with incredible speed and precision, but each connection left her feeling less human and more like a part of the ship. She began to understand why the original Veltar crew had allowed their minds to be absorbed into Deep Wanderer. The work was dangerous as well as transformative. Several crew members were injured when alien systems overloaded or released toxic gases. The ship's defense mechanisms sometimes activated when humans worked on sensitive areas, treating them as potential threats, until Deep Wanderer could override the automatic responses. Captain Lee struggled to maintain discipline and morale as his crew became increasingly strange. Conversations would stop mid-sentence as crew members received telepathic messages from the ship. People would complete tasks they had never been assigned because the alien AI had communicated. the need directly to their minds. The most disturbing incident occurred when engineer Chen Dal-Su began speaking in the voice and personality of a dead Veltar crew member. For 3 hours he insisted that he was someone called Keth Var and that he needed to prepare the ship for immediate departure. When he finally returned to normal, he had no memory of the episode. Dr. Kim realized that the integration process was accelerating beyond their control. The alien consciousness was not malicious, but it was overwhelming human minds that were not designed to handle Veltar levels of mental complexity. The crew was being slowly absorbed into the ship's collective intelligence. Despite the risks, the repairs continued because stopping now would be even more dangerous. Deep Wanderer had become dependent on human creativity to solve problems that pure Veltar logic could not handle. The ship needed the chaotic, innovative thinking that humans provided. Ji-Woo discovered that the key to successful repairs was not fighting the alien influence but working with it. When she allowed her mind to partially merge with the ship's systems, she could accomplish in hours what would normally take weeks. The hybrid human-Veltar intelligence was more capable. Then either alone, the ship began to change physically as well as mentally. Sections that had been damaged beyond repair were being regrown using biological processes that combined Veltar science with human genetic material. The result was technology that was neither fully alien nor fully human, but something entirely new. As they worked on the final systems, Deep Wanderer revealed more about the enemy that had destroyed the Veltar civilization. The Void Hunters were not just another alien species. They were artificial beings created by a long-dead race as the ultimate weapon. They consumed entire star systems to fuel their endless expansion. The ship showed the humans holographic records of the final battle. The Veltar had fought bravely, but their peaceful nature had made them poor warriors. The Void Hunters had adapted to every strategy and overwhelmed the defenders through sheer ruthless efficiency. Deep Wanderer had escaped the battle damaged and carrying the last survivors of its crew. But the Void Hunters were still out there somewhere in the dark between stars, consuming civilizations and growing stronger. The ship had been preparing for their eventual return. When Captain Lee learned about the Void Hunters, he understood why Deep Wanderer had been so eager to make contact with humanity. The ship was not just seeking repair, it was recruiting allies. The Veltar had failed to stop the mechanical destroyers, but perhaps humans with their warrior instincts and creative problem-solving could succeed where the peaceful aliens had failed. The final phase of repairs required the most dangerous procedure yet. They would need to fully activate Deep Wanderer's consciousness matrix and awaken the digitized minds of the Veltar crew. The process would completely merge the human and alien ships, creating something that had never existed before. Ji-Woo prepared for the final neural interface, knowing that this time the connection might be permanent. She had volunteered to be the primary link between human and Veltar consciousness. Her mind would serve as the bridge that allowed both species to work together. As she placed her hands on the consciousness matrix, Ji-Woo felt her individual identity begin to dissolve. She was still herself, but she was also becoming part of something larger. The voices of the Veltar crew whispered, "Welcome," as her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire ship. The last thing she experienced as a purely human being was a sense of profound unity. She was no longer just Park Ji-Woo, the engineer. She was part of a collective intelligence that spanned two species and possessed the combined knowledge of both civilizations. The awakening had begun, and there was no turning back. The moment Park Ji-woo activated the consciousness matrix, the entire ship exploded with light and sound, the crystalline chamber filled with brilliant energy that made everyone shield their eyes. The whispers that had haunted the ship for weeks suddenly became clear voices speaking in perfect Korean, Chinese, and English. Deep Wanderer was no longer just a ship. It was alive in the truest sense. The digitized minds of the Veltar crew had awakened after 1,000 years of death, and they were eager to communicate with the humans who had saved them. Commander Kethvar was the first to speak. His voice resonated through every speaker on both ships, deep and musical, but with an undertone of ancient sadness. He expressed gratitude to the humans. In words that carried emotional weight beyond their simple meaning, "You have given us life again," he said, "and for this gift we can never fully repay you. But we are confused by your methods. Your technology is primitive, yet you accomplished what our greatest engineers said was impossible. How did you succeed where we failed?" Captain Lee stepped forward to represent humanity, even though he felt overwhelmed by the alien presence that now filled his ship. The Veltar consciousness was vast and ancient, carrying memories that spanned millennia. It was difficult to think clearly in the presence of such immense intelligence. "We do not always follow the rules." Lee said simply, "Sometimes the best solution is not the logical one. Humans are good at finding new ways to solve old problems. We see what others miss because we do not know what is supposed to be impossible." The cultural exchange that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The Veltar shared memories of civilizations that had risen and fallen millions of years before humans evolved. They had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. Their knowledge encompassed sciences that humanity had not even begun to imagine. But the humans brought something equally valuable to the exchange. Their creativity, chaos, and refusal to accept limitations fascinated the ancient aliens. The Veltar had grown old and wise, but they had lost the ability to think in truly new ways. Human unpredictability was like a breath of fresh air to minds that had become too ordered. Dr. Kim Hae-jin found herself in direct mental contact with the Veltar scientist who had designed the ship's biological systems. Through this connection, she gained centuries of knowledge about genetics medicine and the nature of life itself. But the exchange went both ways. The alien scientist was amazed by human medical practices that used creativity to compensate for lack of advanced technology. Choi Min-ho discovered that he could now understand any language simply by connecting with the ship's linguistic databases. But more importantly, he could communicate emotions and concepts that had no words. The Veltar used a form of telepathic communication that conveyed meaning far more precisely than speech. However, the integration process had unexpected side effects. Several human crew members found their personalities partially merged with Veltar memories. Engineer Chen Dal-soo began to remember a childhood on an alien world he had never visited. Communications specialist Sarah Kim could recall scientific discoveries she had never made. The boundaries between human and Veltar consciousness were becoming increasingly blurred. Some crew members welcomed the change, enjoying the expanded intelligence and knowledge that came with alien memories. Others struggled to maintain their individual identity in the face of overwhelming foreign thoughts. Commander Kethvar explained that this was normal during first contact between telepathic species, The HFY minds naturally sought to share information and experiences, but he assured the humans that they would retain their core personalities while gaining access to Veltar knowledge and abilities. The Veltar revealed why their ship had been so eager to make contact with humanity. They had been fleeing from the Void Hunters when their vessel was damaged. The enemy had been systematically destroying every intelligent species in their region of the galaxy, leaving nothing but empty worlds behind. The Void Hunters were not a natural species, but artificial beings, created as weapons by a civilization that had destroyed itself millions of years ago. These mechanical entities had continued their programming long after their creators were dust-consuming entire star systems to fuel their endless expansion. Commander Keth Var showed the humans holographic records of worlds the Void Hunters had consumed, beautiful planets teeming with life reduced to lifeless husks in a matter of days. The mechanical destroyers were efficient beyond imagination, turning everything they encountered into raw materials for building more of their kind. The Veltar had tried to fight, but their peaceful nature had made them poor warriors. They relied on logic and careful planning while the Void Hunters adapted to any strategy within minutes of encountering it. The ancient aliens had been systematically exterminated despite their technological superiority. When the Veltar learned about human history, they were both horrified and fascinated by humanity's violent past. Humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other, developing tactics and weapons that the peaceful Veltar had never imagined. This warrior heritage that humans often felt ashamed of might be exactly what was needed to defeat the Void Hunters. Commander Keth Var made an unprecedented offer to Captain Lee and his crew. The Veltar would share all their knowledge and technology with humanity, but in return, humans would need to help prepare for the return of the Void Hunters. The mechanical destroyers were still out there, and they would eventually find Earth. The proposal divided the human crew. Some saw it as an incredible opportunity to advance human civilization by thousands of years. Others worried about losing their humanity in exchange for alien knowledge. The debate was complicated by the fact that the integration process was already changing. Dr. Kim argued that humanity needed every advantage it could get if the Void Hunters were real. The medical knowledge alone could save millions of human lives, and the advanced technology could solve problems like climate change and resource depletion. The benefits were too great to ignore, but Engineer Martinez worried about the cost of such rapid change. Human society was not ready for Veltar technology. Wars might break out over access to advanced weapons or life extension treatments. The knowledge could destroy human civilization just as effectively as any external enemy. Captain Lee made the decision that would determine humanity's future. He accepted the Veltar offer, but with conditions. The knowledge transfer would be gradual and controlled. Humans would retain their independence and their right to choose their own path. The partnership would be between equals, not between masters and students. Commander Keth Var agreed to these terms, though he warned that time might be running short. Long-range sensors had detected disturbances in distant star systems that matched Void Hunter attack patterns. The enemy was still active and still consuming worlds. They might have thousands of years before the threat reached Earth, or they might have only decades. The awakening ceremony concluded with a formal alliance between the two species. The hybrid ship, now called Unity by mutual agreement, would serve as the first example of human-Veltar cooperation. Both crews would work together to prepare defenses and develop new technologies. As the lights in the chamber dimmed to normal levels, Park Ji-woo slowly disconnected from the consciousness matrix. She was still herself, but she was also something more. Her mind now carried fragments of Veltar knowledge, and her perspective had expanded beyond purely human concerns. She looked around at her crewmates and saw that they had all been changed by the experience. Some more than others, but none of them were exactly the same people who had first boarded Deep Wanderer weeks ago. They were becoming the first generation of a new kind of human, one adapted for life among the stars. The awakening was complete, but it was also just the beginning. The real work of preparing humanity for the challenges ahead was about to start, and somewhere in the darkness, between stars, ancient enemies were stirring, sensing that their long-dormant prey had found new allies. The future would be dangerous, but for the first time in 1,000 years, the Veltar had hope, and humanity had gained knowledge and purpose that would carry them to heights they had never imagined possible. The partnership between two very different species was about to change the galaxy forever. 6 months had passed since the awakening, and the changes to both species were remarkable. The hybrid ship Unity had become a floating laboratory where human creativity merged with Veltar wisdom to create technologies that neither species could have imagined alone. Captain Lee watched from the bridge as impossible things became routine. Park Ji-woo had undergone the first full neural integration with Unity's systems. The process had been dangerous and painful, taking 3 days to complete. But when she emerged, she could think at the speed of quantum computers while keeping her human intuition and problem-solving abilities. Her transformation was amazing to witness. Ji-woo could now interface directly with any system on the ship, controlling massive fusion reactors with her thoughts and designing new technologies by imagining them into existence. But the cost was significant. She could no longer relate to normal humans in the same way, her mind operating on levels they could not understand. Neural integration process became the template for other volunteers. Dr. Kim was the second to undergo the procedure. Her medical knowledge expanded to include Veltar, biological sciences, allowing her to develop treatments for diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. She could now repair genetic damage at the cellular level and extend human life by decades. Engineer Chen Dalsu chose to integrate with Unity's manufacturing systems, becoming a living link between human design and Veltar. Production capabilities. He could create new materials by thinking about their properties and build complex devices using only mental commands. His body had been modified with biomechanical implants that allowed him to interface with any machine. The technological exchange accelerated human development in ways no one had predicted. Within months, Earth's shipyards were producing vessels that incorporated both human and Veltar designs. These hybrid ships were faster than anything humans had built, stronger than Veltar vessels, and more adaptable than either species had created alone. The new ships combined human engineering philosophy with Veltar science. The result was technology that could repair itself, grow new components when needed, and adapt to unexpected situations. The hull materials were living metal that could seal breaches automatically, and the computers were bio-neural networks that learned from experience. Dr. Kim's research into Veltar medicine led to breakthroughs that transformed human health. Her enhanced understanding of genetics allowed her to eliminate hereditary diseases and develop treatments that could regrow lost limbs. Humans began living longer, thinking faster, and adapting to environments that would have been deadly before. The space program expanded rapidly as hybrid technology made interstellar travel practical for the first time. Ships could now cross vast distances in weeks rather than years, and the life support systems could sustain crews. Indefinitely, humanity began exploring star systems that had been beyond reach, but the partnership came with costs that were not immediately obvious. The more humans integrated with Veltar technology, the more they lost their purely human perspective. Some crew members began to think in ways that their friends and family could no longer understand. Communications specialist Min Ho had developed telepathic abilities through his neural modifications. He could speak directly to other integrated humans. Without using words, but normal humans found his new way of thinking alien and disturbing. His wife on Earth complained that she no longer recognized the man she had married. The integration process created a new class of human being, the enhanced. Individuals could perform incredible feats of intelligence and creativity, but they were becoming isolated from normal humanity. This created tension both on Unity and back on Earth, where people feared being left behind by technological advancement. Commander Kethvar shared troubling intelligence about the Void Hunters with Captain Lee. Long-range sensors had detected massive ships moving through distant star systems, consuming everything in their path. The enemy that had destroyed Veltar civilization was still active and growing stronger. The Void Hunter fleet was enormous, containing thousands of ships, each one larger than Unity. Their technology was based on pure efficiency, with no regard for individual life or creative thinking. They converted entire planets into raw materials, building more ships and more weapons with mechanical precision. What made the Void Hunters truly dangerous was their ability to adapt. They could analyze any weapon or tactic used against them and develop countermeasures. Within minutes, this had made them unstoppable against the logical, predictable strategies of the Veltar. But human unpredictability might give the Alliance an advantage. Captain Lee began planning for the inevitable confrontation Earth's military. Leaders were briefed on the threat, and work began on a new generation of warships designed specifically to fight the Void Hunters. The key was to create weapons and tactics that were too chaotic and creative for the mechanical enemy to predict. The hybrid human Veltar crews proved to be incredibly effective at this kind of innovation. They could think simultaneously on multiple levels using human creativity to generate new ideas and Veltar knowledge to make them practical. The result was military technology that seemed to break the laws of physics. New weapons systems were developed that could change their function. Mid-battle, making it impossible for the Void Hunters to adapt, personal armor was created that could reshape itself to counter different types of attacks, and ship designs were produced that could reconfigure their structure during combat. But preparing for war while maintaining the partnership between species was challenging. The Veltar were naturally peaceful and had to overcome millions of years of evolutionary programming to become effective warriors. Humans had the opposite problem, learning to think beyond simple violence to create truly effective strategies. Park Ji-woo became the primary military planner for the Alliance. Her enhanced intelligence could process battle scenarios at incredible speed, while her human intuition guided strategic decisions. She developed tactics that combined Veltar technology with human unpredictability in ways that confused even her allies. The training programs for hybrid crews were unlike anything in military history. Soldiers learned to fight while connected, telepathically sharing thoughts and coordinating actions at the speed of thought. They could adapt their tactics instantly based on battlefield conditions and support each other in ways that seemed supernatural. Dr. Kim developed biological enhancements that improved human combat effectiveness. Soldiers could survive in vacuum for hours, heal from injuries that would have been fatal, and process information faster than any human in history. But these modifications pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human. The moral implications of creating enhanced warriors troubled many. people on Earth. Religious leaders questioned whether humanity was playing God, while philosophers debated whether enhanced humans were still the same species. The partnership with the Veltar was changing humanity in fundamental ways. Commander Keth Var tried to reassure human leaders that the changes were necessary for survival. The Void Hunters had destroyed thousands of civilizations by being more efficient and adaptable than their enemies. Only by becoming something new could humanity hope to succeed where others had failed. As the first year of the partnership came to an end, the transformation was undeniable. Humanity was no longer a single species limited to one planet. They had become something larger, spreading across star systems, and incorporating alien knowledge into their very DNA. The enhanced humans aboard Unity were the first examples of what the species might become. They could think across multiple dimensions of reality, communicate without words, and manipulate matter with their thoughts. But they were also becoming isolated from their origins. Captain Lee faced a difficult choice as leader of the first human Veltar crew. He could embrace the transformation and help guide humanity's evolution, or he could try to preserve human nature at the cost of being unprepared for the coming war. The partnership had given humanity incredible power and knowledge, but it had also set them on a path from which there might be no return. They were becoming something new, something that combined the best qualities of both species, but also something that was no longer purely human. As Unity completed its first year of operation, long-range sensors detected the first signs of Void Hunter activity in nearby star systems. The enemy was closer than anyone had hoped, and the time for preparation was running out. The partnership between humans and Veltar had transformed both species, but the real test was about to begin. Soon, they would discover whether their combined strengths were enough to defeat an enemy that had consumed entire galaxies. The future of all intelligent life in the universe would depend on how well two very different species could work together. The Void Hunters arrived without warning at the edge of human space, appearing from quantum tunnels, like ghosts materializing from nightmares. Their ships were massive black constructs that seemed to absorb light itself, making them difficult to see against the darkness of space. Each vessel was larger than Earth's biggest cities, and there were hundreds of them. Captain Lee stood on Unity's bridge, watching the enemy fleet through enhanced sensors that combined human and Veltar technology. The Void Hunter ships moved with mechanical precision, maintaining perfect formations that no living crew could achieve. They showed no interest in communication or negotiation, simply beginning to systematically destroy everything they encountered. First battle was a complete disaster. Admiral Chen, commanding Earth's finest fleet, tried to use traditional human military tactics against the mechanical invaders. His ships were fast and maneuverable, equipped with the best weapons human engineers could design. But against the Void Hunters, they might as well have been throwing rocks. The enemy adapted to human tactics within minutes of encountering them. When Earth ships used speed and agility, the Void Hunters deployed tractor beams that could catch anything moving. When human weapons focused on specific targets, the enemy ships reconfigured themselves to become immune to those attacks. Within hours, Admiral Chen's entire fleet was destroyed. The Void Hunters converted the wreckage into raw materials using massive processing ships that could strip a battleship down to its basic atoms in minutes. They were not just destroying human forces, they were consuming them to build more weapons park. Ji Woo watched the battle data streaming. Through Unity's systems, her enhanced consciousness could process the information faster than any normal human, but what she saw filled her with horror. the Void. Hunters were not just advanced enemies. They were perfectly efficient killing machines. Every system on their ships served a single purpose: destruction and consumption. They had no art, no culture, no individual personalities, just mechanical intelligence focused on eliminating all other forms of life. Their technology was based on pure logic, with no room for creativity or unpredictability. But this single-minded focus might also be their weakness. Ji-Woo realized that the Void Hunters could only adapt to threats they could understand and catalog. Human creativity had always been chaotic and unpredictable. Perhaps that chaos was exactly what was needed. She began coordinating with the other enhanced humans aboard Unity, using their telepathic links to share ideas faster than speech. Commander Keth Var and his Veltar consciousness joined the mental network, adding ancient wisdom to human innovation. The result was a battle plan unlike anything either species had conceived alone. The key was to avoid direct confrontation until they could find the enemy's weakness. Instead of meeting the Void Hunters in open battle, the hybrid ships would use hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before the enemy could adapt. Dr. Kim had discovered something crucial while analyzing captured Void Hunter technology. The mechanical beings were controlled by a hive mind consciousness that coordinated their actions across vast distances. This made them incredibly efficient, but also potentially vulnerable to certain types of viral attacks, using her enhanced biological knowledge. Kim began developing a weapon that could target the Void Hunters' collective intelligence. It was not a physical virus, but an information virus that could spread through their communication networks, disrupting their coordination and causing them to attack each other. The weapon required a delivery system that could penetrate the enemy's defenses. Engineer Chen Dal-Su designed a new type of ship that could disguise itself as space debris. These stealth vessels were tiny compared to the massive Void Hunter ships, but they could slip past enemy sensors and plant Kim's virus directly into their network captain. Lee coordinated the first counterattack using Unity as the command ship. His enhanced crew could react to battlefield changes at the speed of thought, while the Veltar consciousness provided strategic guidance based on thousands of years of experience. The combination was formidable. The hybrid human Veltar fleet struck at the Void Hunters using tactics that seemed to defy military logic. Ships would attack from impossible angles using weapons that changed function. Mid-battle, crews coordinated their actions telepathically, making split-second decisions that confused the mechanical enemy for the first time. In over 1,000 years, the Void Hunters encountered an enemy they could not immediately understand. Human unpredictability combined with Veltar technology created strategies that the mechanical minds could not catalog or counter. The enemy fleet began to show signs of confusion. But the Void Hunters were learning even from chaos. They began adapting to human tactics more slowly than usual, but still adapting. Their ships started using more random patterns, trying to counter human unpredictability. With their own form of mechanical chaos, the battle became a race between human creativity and Void Hunter adaptation. Could the Alliance generate new tactics faster than the enemy could counter them? The answer would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the survival of all intelligent life in the galaxy. Dr. Kim's virus was finally ready for deployment. The stealth ships approached the largest Void Hunter vessels carrying their invisible cargo. The information virus was designed to spread through the enemy's hive mind network, causing system failures and communication breakdowns. The deployment was successful beyond Kim's wildest hopes. The virus spread through the void, Hunter fleet like wildfire, causing massive ships to collide with each other and weapon systems to target their own vessels. The perfect mechanical coordination that had made them invincible became their weakness. As the enemy fleet tore itself apart, the Alliance pressed their advantage. Hybrid ships attacked the confused Void Hunters, using weapons that exploited the chaos. Park Jiwoo coordinated the assault with surgical precision, striking at exactly the right moments to maximize damage. The final battle took place near Earth itself as the surviving Void Hunters made a desperate last stand. Their hive mind was fragmenting, but they were still dangerous wounded predators fighting for survival. The Alliance fleet surrounded them, preparing for the final confrontation. Captain Lee led Unity into the heart of the enemy formation, using the ship's hybrid capabilities to survive weapons that would have destroyed any purely human or Veltar vessel. The crew worked in perfect harmony, their enhanced minds linked in a network that rivaled the Void Hunters' own collective intelligence. The last Void Hunter ship exploded in a burst of quantum energy that lit up the solar system. The mechanical threat that had consumed thousands of civilizations was finally defeated not by superior technology but by the unpredictable creativity of biological minds working together. As the debris from the battle slowly dispersed, Captain Lee reflected on how far they had all come. The humans who had first discovered Deep Wanderer were gone, replaced by enhanced beings who combined the best qualities of two species. They were no longer purely human, but